grotesque and terrifying monsters of Stranger Things, explored in detail. Stranger Things was initially released as a limited series on Netflix with 8 episodes back in 2016. The story is set in the small town of Hawkins, Indiana during the 1980s. Will goes missing in the pilot and his mother Joyce is convinced that her son is very much still alive. She receives a mysterious call filled with static and heavy breathing, followed by gnarly sounds of what resembles predatory animals. Later on, she theorizes that her son is communicating from a parallel dimension and is asking for her help.
Are you okay? But right now, I need you to hide! Listen! No, listen!
Whenever you feel nostalgic about the good old 80s, Hawkins is the perfect destination to transport you back to your favourite decade. From the bulky walkie-talkies to rotary landline phones, they seem to have it all. The show not only pays homage to the decade with its soundtrack and big bold red title cards set against a black screen, but they also have recreated some iconic scenes from classics like E.T. and Alien. In this video, we are going to be talking about the big bad monsters our favourite kids have been up against in the last 3 seasons.
Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
The Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer is the most terrifying monster to have been introduced in this universe so far. He is the antagonist to our favourite kid with superpowers, 11. He's not one of those creatures who goes around squishing people left and right. He is meticulous, cunning, and has the ability to control individuals in the real world, while he himself stays in the Upside Down.
Easy. Just like that.
We get our first glimpse of the monstrosity that he is when Will begins to have visions of the Upside Down leaking into the real world. Initially referred to as the Shadow Monster, the kids rename him the Mind Flayer because of the similarities he bears with the character from Dungeons & Dragons. Both of them are tentacled beasts with the ability to control the psyche of their victims. From the show, we have learned that it's actually possible to break free of the Mind Flayer's control if you remember the happy memories about your friends and family. At the end of Season 2, Will Byers is able to do such, liberating himself of the Mind Flayer and giving instructions to his friends to close the gate to the Upside Down. 11 manages to banish him and close the barrier, but a fragment of the Mind Flayer remains in the real world. Months later, he is able to break free by feeding on rats. He not only has the ability to control others, but he can also melt and merge them into becoming a superior creature who serve his interests. As Will was once possessed by the Mind Flayer, he can feel his presence because of a tingling sensation on the back of his neck. After learning about 11 and her powers, the Mind Flayer begins to perceive her as a threat and openly goes after her. He's able to get a hold of her when she finds Billy using her abilities. Billy is one of the Flayed, who brings other victims to the Mind Flayer. At the end of Season 3, he is able to resist the control of the Mind Flayer once his sister Max reminds him of the happy memories they spent together. Unfortunately, their victory is short-lived as he gets killed by the behemoth. Unlike the other monsters, the Mind Flayer is the only one to have verbally communicated with another character. Through Billy, he tells 11, "You let us in. Now you're gonna have to let us stay. Don't you see? All this time we've been building it. We've been building it for you. All that work, all that pain, all of it for you. And now it's time. Time to end it. We are gonna end you. And when you are gone, we are gonna end your friends. And then we are going to end everyone." This particular message has sparked speculations and conspiracy theories about the Mind Flayer's connection to 11. We saw in Season 2 that 11 was not the only child who was experimented upon in the Hawkins lab. We meet number 8, who has the ability to make others hallucinate. So far, we know about the abilities of the Mind Flayer, and we know that he did escape when a portal to the Upside Down cracked open at the Hawkins lab. There's a teeny tiny possibility of him being the first test subject. We don't know the origin story of the Mind Flayer, but that doesn't stop us from guessing. Was it a coincidence that most of his Flayed victims were working for the Hawkins post? Maybe he was getting revenge for a past cover-up. It might have been a fire accident that took away his human form, hence his fear of fireworks and warm temperatures. Remembering happy memories with friends and family is what helps you break free of his control, so that could be exactly what he was denied throughout his life, making it one of his weaknesses. There's a possibility he created the Upside Down at the moment of his death as a sanctuary and training ground for those with psychic powers to plot revenge on the humans. He sees 11 as a traitor to his cause for being an ally to mankind. In the next season, we could learn about his true origins. The Demogorgon. Minutes before he disappeared, Will confesses to Mike that the Demogorgon got him in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. While racing back home, he runs into the Demogorgon, who captures him and drags him to the Upside Down. The flower-headed humanoid was inspired by the sharks in Jaws. Just like the shark, the Demogorgons hunt their prey based on instinct instead of intelligence. They can detect blood from a distance and prefer to drag their victims to their natural environment before feasting on them.
Demogorgon.
11 was the first one to make contact with the Demogorgon. Dr. Martin Brenner had placed 11 inside a sensory deprivation tank to eavesdrop on a Russian spy. Even though she was successful in her task, she unknowingly encountered the beast and panicked. But Dr. Brenner's curiosity had been piqued by the monster. He sent 11 down once again, and this time to make contact. As soon as she touches the Demogorgon, cracks begin to appear at the walls of Hawkins' lab. A portal to the Upside Down has now been opened into the real world. The Demogorgon travels between the two planes as he pleases until he is defeated by 11. Throughout Season 1, the main antagonist was the Demogorgon, as he terrorised our favourite characters and attacked their best friends, Will Byers and Barbara. Will manages to survive by hiding in the Upside Down's version of Castle Byers, but Barbara wasn't fortunate enough. There's a possibility that the Russians have some control over the Upside Down and are using Demogorgons to distract the US government from spying on them. From the closing scene of Season 3, we come to know that they have a pet Demogorgon to whom they feed their prisoners. Can it be a coincidence that the first time 11 noticed one of them was while she was eavesdropping on a Russian spy? We already know that the Russians were up to no good under the Starcourt Mall. Quite a few of the scenes with the Demogorgon had been shot with Mark Steger in the costume, as the creators wanted the actors to be able to interact with the beast in real time. The rest was edited with CGI. This helped to recreate the vibes of horror movies in the 80s. The artists were instructed to create a humanoid creature with no face and just a mouth. After multiple sketches of asymmetrical creatures, the final version was brought to life. 11 did defeat a Demogorgon at the end of the first season, but unfortunately for Hawkins, there are plenty more where that one came from. Hopefully we will get to see them kill more people in Season 4, when we are not in Hawkins anymore.
D'Artagnan. I'm gonna call you D'Artagnan.
D'Artagnan. D'Artagnan, better known as Dart, is Dustin's pet demodog from Season 2. After his return from the Upside Down, Will had thrown up a slug-like creature and had recurring visions of being back in the Upside Down. On Halloween night, after the kids got back from trick-or-treating, Dustin hears someone rummaging through the dustbin. After a closer inspection, he observes a slug-like creature flipping around on the lid. Thinking he has discovered a new species, Dustin decides to keep the slug as a pet. He feeds the slug a Three Musketeers nougat bar, which the slug devours immediately. Fascinated by his new pet, he names him after one of the characters from the eponymous novel, D'Artagnan, or Dart for short. The next day, he takes Dart to school to be studied by their science teacher to confirm his discovery of a new species. He shows Dart to the other boys, where Will recognizes how similar it is to the slug he regurgitated. Terrified, he informs the others that the slug is a creature from the Upside Down. While the rest of them try to attack and capture Dart, Dustin sneaks him out via his cap. The slug evolves into a frog-like species.
What is he?
A few days later, Dart has another growth spurt and now starts to bear resemblance to the petal-headed Demogorgon who terrorized the kids the previous year. To make matters worse, Dart ends up eating Muse, Dustin's cat. Scared by the carnivorous nature of his pet, Dustin gears up in a hockey costume and chases Dart into a storm shelter with his hockey stick. He calls Steve for assistance to help him capture his Demogorgon pet. Dart escapes them by digging a tunnel. The next time they see Dart, he has grown into a Demodog. Recognizing Dustin, he was initially angry at him for chasing after him with a hockey stick, but they make up after he is offered a nougat bar. He lets the kids pass through the tunnel system. The heartwarming reunion was of significance as we learn that even the Demogorgon could break free of the control of the Mind Flayer. The reunion was short-lived as 11 closed the gate and all the Demodogs who couldn't pass over to the Upside Down drop dead as their connection has been cut off. D'Artagnan showed 5 stages of growth. He went from being a slug-like polywog to a frog-like creature. From a frogogorgon, he evolved into the catagorgon, big enough to eat a cat. As an adolescent, he is roughly the size of a big dog, and much like them, walks on all fours, earning him the name of Demodog. He has the ability to excavate tunnels through the earth, and his skin is thick enough to withstand a bullet. He's able to recognize Dustin a long time after being separated from him. So far, he's the only character from the Upside Down to have resisted the control of the Mind Flayer. Maybe there's a chance that other fauna from the Upside Down are able to do the same. Dart is proof that all Demodogs aren't evil by nature, but they will move on from their nougat diet.
It's okay, it's just me.
The inspiration behind the growth of Dart from Polywog to Frogogorgon was puberty. It was similar to the actual process of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, which doesn't look as pretty as it sounds. Most of our main characters are prepubescent, and the whole ordeal of turning into an adult is a stressful process. Dart was designed with the intent of hiding his origin in the first 2 stages. He had to look harmless and non-threatening so that Dustin would take him in as his pet. The 3rd stage, Dart's colour darkened, skin thickened, and fanged petals replaced his face. The stage revealed his predatory nature as Dustin hid from Dart behind his shelter. Dustin and Dart's relationship was similar to Billy and the Gremlins' relationship from the movie Gremlins, as both of them unknowingly raise a predatory creature. Not surprisingly, Gremlins was one of the influences behind the sound design of Dart. The Spider Monster. The Spider Monster is an amalgamation of the melted remains of the Flayed, who took the shape of a giant tentacled monster to hunt and kill Eleven and her friends. The spider was controlled by the Mind Flayer and displayed the same aversion to heat and fireworks. The Russians built a secret base under the Starcourt Mall and opened the Upside Down with one of the keys. Their experiment ended up giving the Mind Flayer access to the real world once again. He started to regain control by feeding off rats under Brimburn steelworks and melting and merging them into a superior species. Rodents were no longer enough to do his bidding, so he made Billy's car crash near the steel mill.
Said who's there?
Once Billy went back to inspect the cause, the Mind Flayer took control of him, just as he had possessed Will the previous year, and used him to spy on the Hawkins lab. Billy, being the physically stronger host, brought in more victims to the steel mill to be flayed, including his colleague Heather. The Mind Flayer later used Billy as bait to lure in Eleven and attack her. During the showdown at Starcourt Mall, a part of the spider monster ends up inside Eleven's leg. She does use her power to pull it out, but a fragment remains under her skin. This ends up severely affecting and weakening her abilities for months after the fight is over. Just like the Demogorgon, the spider monster is a faceless anomaly. It is gigantic in size and it keeps growing by the second as more melted remains of the Flayed merge into his physical form. While the other kids divert the spider monster's attention by throwing fireworks at him, Max reaches out to Billy and somehow is able to pull him out of the Mind Flayer's influence. Once Billy recovers, he stands up to the spider monster, giving his sister and his friends a chance to escape. Enraged by his betrayal, the spider monster stabs Billy with his tentacles, leaving him lifeless. Meanwhile, Joyce and Hopper rush to close the gate using the second key. Hopper ends up sacrificing himself as it's too late for him to get back to safety. It's hinted in the closing scene of Season 3 and the trailer of Season 4 that Hopper has survived and somehow ended up in a Russian prison. With Eleven splitting the spider monster's face in half and Joyce closing the gate, the spider monster's connection to the Mind Flayer was severed, and he dropped dead like the demagogues from the previous season. The Hospital Monster. While interning for the Hawkins post, Nancy received calls from Doris Driscoll about rabid rats eating her fertilizer. Without the knowledge of her superiors, Nancy takes Jonathan to meet Doris under the guise of being a reporter. Doris leads them down to her basement to show them one of the rodents she's managed to capture. Moments after the couple leave the house, the rat melts and escapes the trap, evolving into biomass. The next day, Nancy and Jonathan return to follow up on the story, but no one answers the door. Worried that Doris might be injured, they break in and find Doris eating from the bag of fertilizer. They immediately call an ambulance to hospitalize her, but Doris keeps screaming that she has to go back. Nancy visits Doris at the hospice and notices black veins on her, recognizing the symptoms from when Will was possessed by the Mind Flayer. On learning about his return, Nancy and Jonathan visit Doris once again, this time with the intention of freeing her in the hopes that she'll lead them to where the Mind Flayer is hiding. To their surprise, Doris is nowhere to be found, but Bruce Lowe and Tom Holloway wait for them to show up. After being killed, both of their bodies melt and morph into each other in the hallway as they take the shape of a crab-like monster. The monster chases after Nancy and Jonathan rushes after them to help her. Nancy somehow manages to hide behind a closed door, but the monster melts and enters the room, once again taking his previous form and attacks Nancy. 11 enters the scene at the right time and pushes the creature off Nancy, causing him to jump out the window. The gang quickly follows after him, but once again he dissolves and goes down the drain pipe, merging into the spider monster, as the other flayed humans follow suit. The hospital monster is a miniature version of the spider monster, which the gang goes up against in the final episode. The moment it melts and passes through the door to attack Nancy is truly terrifying, as you fear for her dear life. Thankfully, 11 was just around the corner to save the day, as she always does. The hospital monster gives us a teeny tiny glimpse of the extent of the Mind Flayer's power. We can only assume how powerful the actual Hive is if the party were to face him one-on-one. The Hawkins tunnel system. After being rescued from the Upside Down, Will was suffering from visions of the Mind Flayer for a long time. Knowing it might be difficult for her son to verbally communicate, she encouraged him to scribble whenever he was scared. Will started drawing his visions as he was now connected to the Mind Flayer through a hive mind, which allowed him to see what the Mind Flayer was seeing. At first glance, the visions looked like random patterns, but once it was laid out in the buyer's living room, assembled in the correct order, it depicted a maze-like pattern. Hopper, believing that the drawings showed vines, headed to Meryl's pumpkin patch and started digging up the soil. After digging, he found a tunnel filled with carcasses of creatures from the Upside Down. While exploring the shaft, he came across a growth that squirted a poisonous spray into his face, making him lose consciousness. Will gets a vision of Hopper lying in the passageway and immediately alerts Joyce that Hopper is in trouble. Joyce calls over Bob to help because of his expertise with puzzles. Bob realizes that the pattern is a map of Hawkins and pinpoints Hopper's exact location. Meanwhile, Hopper wakes up in the tunnel and realizes he's in trouble. On coming upon an intersection, he discovers that the tunnels are vulnerable to fire. Using a torn piece of his sleeve and a piece of carcass, he creates a torch and marches ahead. Soon, exhaustion gets to him, and so do the vines. Thankfully, Joyce and Bob are able to find Hopper and rescue him from the tunnels. But on the ground above, Will starts to convulse and collapses. He is rushed into the infirmary in Hawkins' lab, where he is diagnosed with a virus that connects him to all the other host bodies in the Upside Down. Using the opportunity, Will sends all of the scientists to the vines to hunt for the Mind Flayer. It turns out to be a trap set by the Mind Flayer to kill them all. On breaking free of his control, Will reveals that the Mind Flayer made him do it, but it's too late to save them. Lucas, Dustin, Max, along with Steve, head to the tunnels to set it ablaze, while Hopper and 11 arrive just in time to close the gates. Once the gate is closed, the tunnel, along with all the other creatures from the Upside Down that were left behind in the real world, die after losing their connection to the Mind Flayer. The Hawkins tunnel system was a creature from the Upside Down, which took the shape of a series of tunnels and also served as a graveyard for dead animals from both dimensions. The network was built by the art department on a soundstage. 6 to 14 feet diameter wooden ring sets were used for the construction. Backlight made of plywood rings wrapped by chicken wire was used to encompass the light in the tunnels for cinematographer Tim Ives. VFX was later layered on to create the eerie graveyard vibes. The tunnel system is yet to make a reappearance after the second season. Filled with animal carcasses, poisonous spore clusters, and carnivorous vines, it is terrifying enough to make you feel claustrophobic and fill you with fear of ending up as a corpse glowing on its surface. The Vines. The Vines is an underrated antagonist in Stranger Things. They have the ability to follow you and hang you upside down. We first see the vines wrapped around Barbara so tightly that she suffocates to her death. When Will is found in the upside down, a vine is sticking down his throat, wrapped around his lungs. Hopper uses gunshots and brute force to free Will from the vine's grasp. The vines reappear in Season 2 under the Hawkins tunnel system, as they follow Hopper and end up entangling him. He is saved just in time by Joyce and Bob. While the kids escape from the tunnel, Mike falls behind as a tendril manages to tie up his leg and pull him down. Luckily, Steve grabs Mike and saves him from the vine. The hive mentality of the creatures from the Upside Down is confirmed when a scientist in the Hawkins lab sets fire to a part of the vines, and Will begins to screech in pain as all of them are connected to the Mind Flayer. Just like all the other flayed creatures, the vines are intolerant to fire and hot temperatures. The vines are more terrifying than the other creatures because you don't see them coming. They don't make noise as the Demogorgon would. And the vines may look like climbers, but they are just as predatory as reptiles in nature. They could be growing in your backyard unnoticed until they drag you through the Upside Down. The Flayed. The various humans and rodents infected under the influence of the Mind Flayer are termed as the Flayed. Will Byers was the first one to be contaminated, and so far he is the only survivor of the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer used the vines to turn him into a host that lied to the scientists to send him to a death trap. To free him, Will's family placed him near heaters. The Mind Flayer's part, which remained dormant in the real world, was activated once the Russians used one of the keys to unlock the Upside Down. The Mind Flayer influenced the rats to consume chemicals, making them explode the pipes to set him free. He then lured in Billy Hargrove, who became the primary host to do his bidding. All Flayed are connected through a hive mind. When one of them gets injured, every one of them shares the pain. The Mind Flayer also uses the connection to send blasts of psychic powers to help them fight against the others. The Flayed in Season 3 acted differently from Will in Season 2. Will, for example, never displayed the urge to feed on chemicals and fertilizers. However, all of the Flayed share the same aversion to warm temperature and fire as the Mind Flayer. Although it's not possible to break free of his control, most Flayed just obey the command and do as they are told. The most grotesque feature of the Flayed is their ability to melt and morph together into a bigger monster. The scene where all the Flayed just melt and attach themselves to create a spider monster is quite stomach-churning. Even though the role of the Flayed is to serve as minions, it doesn't make them any less terrifying. The estimated count of all the Flayed whose death was covered up as a fire incident at the Starcourt Mall is approximately 30 humans and hundreds of rodents. We look forward to seeing more horrifying monsters in Season 4. Until Hopper returns to our screens, remember to keep the door open 3 inches.
This is all the time we had for today's episode. We hope you guys liked it. It would be awesome if you guys can take some time to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to tell us which topic you want us to cover in the comment section. Have a fantastic day ahead and stay safe.